If anyone has questions, we want this to be an interactive panel. So please put your questions in the Q&A. We have a lot of interesting dynamic things to talk about. So please, please ask us anything. We want your engagement as much as possible.
Yes. Okay, quick round of intro. Let me just quickly introduce myself. I'm Asutosh. Most of Indians call me Asutosh, but in the US, they call me Ash. So I'm the general partner and CEO at Expedozo. It's been 3 years. I've been running the fund with Brian, who was supposed to be joining and then moderating it, but because of some last minute, stuff, he had to drop. And I'm just kind of like covering his absence. So bear with me. But really appreciate you all joining. We are an early stage VC fund based in California in Los Angeles. Have invested more than 266, not more than, but exactly 266 companies around the world, 30 in India, 40 in Africa. Majority of them are based in the US itself. But you guys all know Expedozo a little bit, so I'll not bore with the Expedozo or my intro. But today we have some amazing guests that I got an opportunity to host you guys, talking about like how your American dream can turn out to be true, right? So we have Matt, we have main one, and there are many ways. Like, as for my understanding, my path to the US dream was F1, like OPT, all this shit. Like, so there are so many things that you navigate through if you go through any of those process, and that's why we have some expert today joining. Main one have the legal background, has practicing his own, like I think your own law firm that you launched, and then you were specifically expertise having whatever the categories A to C to G or whatever it is, but I'll call it EB1, EB1, EB-5, and then you are the right person to also walk us through about your background. And we have Matt, who I know from way back from LA, Plan Writers Times. Now you got a New World Ventures. So I mean, like this man is like an animal killer, like literally. When it comes to IB, when it comes to cracking the deals, I've known him for years now. Got to know him from Expodozo, of course. So, dear friend, and it's an opportunity to share the stage and the panel with you both together. So, really welcome you all. Let's kick it off. So, let's start with Min first, your introduction, and then I'll come to Matt, and then we can talk about the EB-5 that we are here for. All
Wow.
right?
Yeah, it sounds good. Thank you for all these kind of exciting introductions. And I'm actually kind of so happy to actually join both of you and then we have like a nice, the attendees here too, waiting for us to actually kind of cracking the code, how to actually kind of come to the United States, what's the best way to actually kind of do so. A little bit of background on myself. I myself, an immigrant, and then I've been in the United States, roughly more than 25 years. I started just like Ash you said. Well, back in the days, the way that you come to the United States, you come to here, either your scholarships or government funded, whatever it is. You come to the United States, finish the school, go through the H-1B and employment based one. I went through all those systems. Okay, and then the work for the farms, and then large farms and small farms, and until open my own immigration farm. We have a very, very high level expert staff in my farms, roughly 10 people, and then we covers every single employment base, and then the immigration related, the compliance and everything, the visas and the petitions from EB1 to all the way to EB-5. That covers like a kind of, the groups that we call so-called like a best and the brightest. And then there's someone who has their own merit that can come to the United States without an employer. And then other kind of employment-based groups where, I built my company big enough, and then I want to, expand my market to the United States. For them, so we help them to move the people to the United States, expand their business further. And then the last group is more like investment groups where, you know what, I've done enough, and then I'm gonna be maybe sit back, and then I'm maybe just kind of set the policy and then lead this kind of the business the entities, but I'm through the other business entity through the investment. So those are the major groups that we are helping. And then in addition to that, I also heavily involved in legislative work as a Congressional Advocacy Committee chair, working with the senator's offices and the representative offices in order to have some sort of the meaningful immigration reform, which include E2 visa availability for Indian nationals. So that's something that we can actually kind of discuss later on. But I'm gonna pass the baton to Matt.
Thank you, Minwon, and that's huge, and thank you for everything you've done. Listen, before I introduce ourselves, I just really want to extend a very gracious thank you to my good friend Ash. You know, for those of you that don't know, Expert Dojo is really a pillar in our community, right? They've helped so many startups, right, that just have wonderful ideas and talent, and they really like help transform a lot of these startups into market leaders. And Ash, I've got to know you personally in LA. And I love how your firm is flipping the script. All this opportunity for Indian founders, all this talent, money going directly into India. And the reason why we're having this panel is the logical next step for a lot of these founders is how to access the US market, right? And this is kind of where our relationship and the joint venture comes in. And we're going to talk about that. Real quick about me, Matthew Khalili. I'm founder of New World Ventures. What I am basically is an investment bank. I handle the investment and business side of immigration. Just like Minwan, just like Ash, you know, we have a great immigration story as well. My family had to escape the Iranian Revolution in 1979, and they were able to get a student visa. Luckily, at the last second, you know, even though they were a minority group in this country that was prosecuted, they were luckily able to get a student visa, and they studied computer science, and they were able to stay in this country because of business and entrepreneurship. So that pathway just has a very meaningful place in my heart. And it's because of entrepreneurship that I'm literally alive with it, because they're able to access the US market. So we're going to dive in, Ash, with your permission, unless there's anything you want to say, because we have so much interesting things to share today.
To be honest, like this is very exciting conversation because we all have the same stories, one way or another, right? Like, and it's hard to be an immigrant in the country because you are navigating a lot of legalities. Because like the reason why I can say like this is a no agenda kind of a panel discussion, very open, very like kind of like to the point in a way that we can talk about our stories starting from there, right? So I have navigated all my legal process myself, and it's hard because you are a student. I'm talking about like student side of it, or be it as an investor as well. It doesn't really matter. It's the same thing because you have a work to do, right? On one side, you're like super busy on your own stuff. You don't want to like deal with the legalities. You don't want to deal with where the opportunity, because most of the time the problem in this market is like if you go through, let's say EB-5 or O1, like the trust. You need to be a trusted investment advisory sort of a thing, at the same time a trusted lawyer, right? So I think we're going to touch point on how we can navigate the trust risk and how easy and seamless the process can be. But before I dive in, very quickly, I mean, like, again, thank you both for joining and really appreciate it because, we are here in India. The reason being, we're going to make sure that we are creating the bridge between India and the US. And there's a lot of capital flow coming to India. Not only that, but there is a lot of rich family. The middle class are rising, which means immigration and migration, nobody can stop it. Like, it doesn't matter what's going on the geopolitical side, right? So this is always a great opportunity to navigate the seamless and like the path forward for your future generations as well. But before we dive in, let me simplify. What is EB-5? I know we are talking about EB-5, and then we can talk about like some other alternatives later. But for people who are joining, there are folks who might be student, there might be investment, like been doing investment. They might be coming from a rich family, mid class family. I don't know what kind of crowds are there, but let's touch base, considering that folks are joining from different backgrounds, different education background, different financial background. At the same time, there are folks I think also joining not only from India but from other countries as well. But majorly we'll focus on India, but please touch point. I think the process and laws are pretty much same for anybody migrating from any place. But what is EB-5 and
Yeah.
what are we talking about? Let's start from
Thanks.
there. Any one of you.
Yeah, thanks, Ash. So we'll dive in. So EB-5 is an established program in the US that allows immigration from investment, right? Specifically at this very snapshot of time, it's a foreign direct program like other countries have, where you invest a certain amount of capital, create exactly 10 jobs, right? And that gives you a predictable pathway to getting a green card. Within the EB-5, there's different pathways. There's an entrepreneurial pathway where we actually start a venture, create a company, own a business. And then there's a passive pathway through something known as a regional center program, where one can invest as an LP, not have to deal with any job creation requirement. And Minwan will touch on it later in this presentation, but at the end of the day, you invest and you earn a green card and later citizenship through that pathway. To give everyone a context, many countries have a similar program, like Australia, Europe had a program like this. There's different countries that have limited forms of this. America is very rare because the amount we're asking for compared to other first world countries is less than half. Very few countries even have this option available. And the motivations are very specific in the US. So, Minwan, I know you probably have a lot more to say from a legal perspective, but why don't you
Mhm.
kind of give your kind of background and what the
Yeah.
program is?
So I'm gonna take a little back from what the Matt actually kind of described. So Matt gave the nutshell of EB-5 program in a very, very short and concise statement. So to give you a little bit of historical background about EB-5, going back to the Ash's initial questions, EB, that stands for employment based. The 5 stands for the fifth preference categories. So the U.S. immigration system is, there's a couple of different things, but we are talking about employment-based the visa category among first, second, and third, and fourth, all different categories. This is called fifth preference category. Preference category means that there's a specific visa numbers that is allocated per year. So which we will discuss later on. So there are a specific number, like a 10,000 visa numbers available for this specific category. And that specific category is based on the investment. That's why we keep saying colloquially, oh, EB-5, EB-5. And then it's about investment visas. So that's the more like a kind of context of what Matt was actually explaining. So going back to Matt.
Yeah, thanks. And I think this is kind of a good place to dive in. So I'm gonna share my screen with your permission, Ash. But
Yeah, please go ahead.
yeah, awesome. So look, I know we have people from other countries, but right now, India, I would say, is one of the most popular sources of immigration, if not the highest in numbers to America right now. But just to kind of, talk about motivations, right? So a lot of Indian founders want to come to this market for a number of reasons. Okay. First thing is, Ash, I don't know if you've seen the numbers this year, but the VC capital in the US has reached about 60% of all global US venture capital, right? So really the idea is Indian communities thriving in business and startups are doing very well. And I know you guys are making incredible investments and growing there, and it's a great investment. But like a lot of countries, that becomes the staging, the seed ground to grow big business. The next stage is for a lot of these companies to want to come into the US. And a big reason for that is access to risk capital. Very few markets in the US have an established VC ecosystem. And it's clear not everyone's willing to take risk like you guys are for earlier stage ventures. So when 60% of the entire world's venture capital, a lot of it based in AI, is concentrated in one country, being able to be in the US is a huge part of it, right? Proximity to markets, it's very obvious as well. Not only is all the VC capital here, the US in 2025 had still 1/3 of all consumer markets, right? So all consumer spending for the entire world happens in the US. The customers are still here, right? We hear that America has political turbulence, and I'm not saying we don't, and I'm not saying we're perfect, and this is not a political conversation, but what it is, it's a testament to our stability, right? We can have all sorts of things happen in our, in our political system, but we remain stable. There's checks and balances. Stock market reaches all-time high, businesses continue as normal, capital markets are all stable. This is very rare for a lot of countries, right? And to be able to have that stability, it's really important in business. Now, I will say right now in this snapshot of time, and Minwon is going to talk about this later in the slides, right? The the restrictions in the US are definitely real. It is not easy to access both visas and permanent residency in the US through legal pathways. And this is why the EB-5 conversation is so important. But the motivations for business are really clear. And on the personal side, right? Also, just a few things to make sense. You want to send families here to live the US like lifestyle. The education system here is still the primary destination, right? Like, Asher, I know you went to Harvard University. We still command, the top universities in the world. And, many of them, there's Ivy Leagues, there's a league of schools. Many countries, they have very good education. There's no doubt about it. But, from the sheer number of the university systems, the engineering schools, it's unprecedented. Minwon, I know you're from Korea, and in your country, there's so much talent and intelligent people, but there's very few universities they have to go to. And the American dream for the Koreans is to be able to come to the US and get a US education because there's so few options and and so much talent in Korea, right? Now, for the founder system, right, being able to get that access to education and start the pathway is huge. If you're a resident, you're paying in-state tuition, right? So like I'm in Los Angeles, if you want to pay out-of-state tuition versus something in-state, if you have residency, you're saving 30, $40,000 a year per kid, right? And you're getting access to top-notch, education. So of course, there's so many reasons why, a founder may want to come here, but America is still the land of opportunity. It's where we do business. So I know there's a lot of questions. What is EB-5? We had a short discussion on it. Uh, Ash, everyone in here. Let me just tell you something. This isn't a fly-by-night program, right? It's been around since 1990, right? What we have to do is exactly invest $800,000 into a project, right? A project can be a startup. It could be your startup, right? I would say 80% of people who invest, 90%, right? Sometimes they invest in a real estate construction project, right? And you're an LP, and they have very sophisticated mechanisms through indirect job creation by means of construction and economic impact where jobs are captured. But an $800,000 investment has to result in 10 net new jobs. Okay. The numbers really matter. Every year, only 10,000 visas are available. Just so you know, each investment supports an entire family, and each family member is part of that 10,000 count. So it is actually pretty restricted. There's only 10,000 families that can be supported each year. And each country only has 7% available quotas out of that category, right? So what that means is it's very popular in the EB-5 in the Indian community, but right now there's still availability of visas for Indians, and Minwon can touch a little bit about it. But before Minwon,
Mhm.
before we go back, and I want to talk about like visa capacity, I really think that the history is really important, right? So EB-5 has been around, like I said, since 1990. Just to show you the numbers, over $40 billion of capital has been deployed through this program, right? Uh, Several hundred thousand people have migrated to the US through this program. It became really popular, I would say, after 2008. It was a very less known program before then. But after the 2008 recession, right, people wanted to like explore alternative capital because getting capital to normal banking markets were very restricted, right? So then people realized, oh, people would be willing to share their capital to get immigration benefit. And we created a really win-win-win dynamic. The dynamic is pretty simple. Project sponsors get access to alternative capital. That capital, just so everyone knows, is generally below market like performance, right? So anyone here as a prospective investor should really keep expectation that your capital is going to be below what you would get in the market, but your ROI is access to the US market, right? And ability to give your family that generational access as well. And the developer is very happy. They get to use that capital. The government's very happy because it creates jobs, right? So after 2008, this became really popular. And it really just kind of took off after 2022, and where we created a lot of reforms. So I would say EB-5 overall had a reputation, okay? I'd say before 2022. After 2022, there's fund administrators, there's third-party oversight. It's become an institutional pathway where really big players known as regional centers have stepped in and offering very well underwritten projects. And so many incredible startups have come through it. To give everyone an idea, where Minwon lives right now, we have this project site called the Hudson Yards that was funded by EB-5 visa program, right? Where I live in Los Angeles, we have the Port of Los Angeles, a government infrastructure project. It's funded by EB-5, right? Back to the East Coast, the Grand Central Station, New York City, like iconic project. It's being funded by the EB-5 visa program. So many cool ventures. I'm working on a medical device startup, small businesses right now. Me and Minwan are helping a mechanic grow his business through a small business startup through the EB-5 visa program. So it comes through all shapes and flavors, venture type projects, small business, iconic, real big infrastructure projects in the US, and everything in between. So really the world is our oyster, and it's really exciting. Minwan, I know I said a lot, right? And we talked about and we talked about kind of the visa capacities, right? But I think it's really important to put in context, right, what alternative routes people from Indian nationals have. Minwan, I talked about immigration being restrictive in the US. I know you're an expert in a lot of these other visa categories, right? So everybody knows kind of the ecosystem and role. Again, what I am is an investment banker. I help structure investment solutions, businesses through immigration. I am not an immigration lawyer, right? I work in tandem with an immigration lawyer like Minwan. He helps the legal pathway, the legal strategy, application. I help find investments. I help find businesses and startups. I help consult businesses and startups. Minwan, I'd love for you to kind of share your insights, what's going on today with alternative visa routes for, I'd say, many founders and Indian-born nationals.
Okay, sounds good. Just kind of to recap what the Matt just kind of presented. Just want to make sure that we are all on the same page. Just to go, let's go back to EB-5. We said, the Ash asked about what is EB-5. I explained that that's employment-based visa program of the fifth category, right? And then what I didn't mention about was that is actually kind of immigrant visa. There are two type of visas. One is for the immigrant, meaning that once you receive this immigrant visa, and then with that visa you enter the United States, from that point on you become permanent resident in the United States, meaning that all the benefits that citizens actually kind of entertain, the permanent resident can entertain the same way, except the ability to vote and then enter as jurors in a trial. Those two things. Other than that, being permanent resident, you basically enjoys everything. Okay, and Matt also briefly mentioned about the having being the permanent resident, the entertaining those kind of in state, out of state, those kind of tuition benefits. Those are something ancillary to the having the benefits of the being permanent resident. Anyway, that said, I'm gonna move to what we wanted to actually discuss. Oh, right before that, so Matt also explained about the whole history, like a 35 years. I mean, this program went through the 35 years. That means there's a lot of congressional investigations, a lot of litigations went through, and then there's amendments, and then investigations, and the response. So through which this, when we have this program, this is such a highly regulated industry. So in terms of the legality wise, this is a pretty well structured. So the in terms of the foreign nationals who is not familiar with this is a pretty trustworthy program that you can rely on. Now, just because the program itself is reliable, that doesn't necessarily mean that you don't. There's a guarantee, or you don't necessarily have to do your job. That's something we're going to discuss further. What are the things? What are the risks that you have to be careful about? But before we get into that, now let's talk about why EB-5 as opposed to H-1B, L-1, O-1, and E-2. Now, all these other, this is like H-1B, L-1, O-1, E-2. This is a type of visa, okay? And then it goes by its own statutes, subsections H and subsection 1 and B. So these are type of work visas. This doesn't, the fundamental difference between EB-5 and H-1B, L-1, and O-1, E-2 is EB-5 gives you the permanent resident status, while H-1B, L-1, O-1, E-2, even if you get it, there's a lot of limits here and there, and then it's only work visa. That's the fundamental difference. And then now I'm going to go one by one. The reason that H-1B, L-1, O-1, E-2 is frequently discussed is because this is a type of work visa that is frequently used by founders and entrepreneurs. Okay, let's start with the H-1B. Now, for Indian entrepreneurs, you might have heard about the H-1B. A lot of people talk about H-1Bs and this and that and that. H-1B is the kind of, the work visa program that is available for foreign nationals. Actually, that is available for the U.S. employers who is willing to hire a foreign national. Okay, so for founders, when you are not an employee, you are the employer. That in and of itself makes H-1B, the application is relatively difficult. There's some caveat that you can get around it, but that's more like a kind of advanced level of discussion. But for now, H-1B is mostly for an employee, not for the employer. And then there's annual quotas, and then because of that, there's a lottery system that you have to go through. So most of the times, this is not the advisable to an entrepreneur. Okay. Now, next one is L1. L1 also a lot of Indian the workers and then entrepreneurs they heard about that because there are huge, many big the IT companies in India sending their employees to the United States, and then they go through the L1 program. L1 is more for intra-transferee. So when you have one office abroad and then another office in the United States, they can move from one to another. Now, how this is applicable to the entrepreneur, it can be applicable because the one of the subsection that allows on the L1 is when foreign national with the substantial business abroad, when they want to open a new office, branch office, affiliate, or subsidiary, they allow them foreign national to come to the United States, open the other office on the L1. So that is used. But again, this is a work visa, and then it has a maximum, the validity period, which initially start from 1 year and then extended all the way up to 7-year maximum. That's it. So within that time frame, they have to find a way to stay in the United States permanently, which goes back to EB-5. Although there's also another method. But for now, I'm going to just kind of, leave it that. And the O1, E2, O1 is for some entrepreneurs who has risen to the level that, I'm actually kind of, at this level that some so-called like having some extraordinary abilities. Okay, not every entrepreneurs meet this aviation standard. So that's pretty high. And then E2 is mostly for like E2 treaty countries when they actually kind of come to the United States and then making an investment and then through which they actually kind of, to build the business. This is a pretty good opportunity for treaty countries. Unfortunately, India is not part of the treaty country. So E2 is not applicable to Indian founders. Okay? So Matt, so going back to you.
Yeah, thanks, Minwan. I think the real million-dollar question is, right, and the reason why the benefit of EB-5 is people want to understand what that pathway looks like, right? So, Minwan, I'd love for you to touch this, but I tell my clients basically two things, right? If you're applying from abroad, there's a specific pathway. You actually apply directly for your green card through your consulate, and that has its certain timelines. And if one of the most popular ways right now to apply for an EB-5 program is within the United States, right? You can actually be on one of these other visas. You can come as a student, right? You can come as, you can be on an H-1B, you can be on an L visa, right? As long as you didn't have immigrant intent on those non-dual visas. But if you're in here, you can actually apply and do something known as adjustment of status. And while you're actually waiting for the green card to be approved, you can stay here until that time, right? And there's a pathway as well where they're going to give you an EAD, which Minwan, I'd love you to talk about, and something known as advanced parole, meaning you get work authorization and you can get free travel benefits until the green card is being issued. But bottom line, right, there's different types of EB-5 investments that have priority or not that I'll touch on a little bit. If you invest in certain projects, okay, I've seen clients get conditional green card approval in as little as I would say 4 or 5 months, the average being anywhere from 6 to 12 months. So think about it, one investment in the US, 6 to 12 months of approval time, right, for a priority processing project. Now, that is one pathway. I know there's a different pathway when you apply abroad, and I know it adds more timelines. Minwan, you are the legal expert. What are you guys seeing in timeline? What are the different pathways? What are the different steps in filing for an EB-5 to getting a green card?
Okay, so EB-5 filing, I would say that there are two separate, the application is going. One is petitioning stage. Okay, this is kind of filing of petitions, saying that I have a legitimate source of fund that I made an investment. Through the investment, I want to have my, the permanent resident status. Another application is, hey, I have like an underlying petition that allows me to change my status from non-immigrant to permanent resident. That's another application. We use the legal term called adjustment. That adjustment means you basically change your status from one to another. So those two applications go side by side. Now, thankfully, because of Reform and Integrity Act mentioned in his, the first few slides back in 2022, what happened was, back in the days, you were supposed to actually kind of get your petition approved first. And then, once the petition is approved, now you're allowed to file these change of, adjustment of status application. Now, that changed it, and then now they allow you to file concurrently as long as visa numbers are available. Now, so for now, at least for the month of the May, the visa number is still current, meaning that it's still available. So you can actually file those two applications together. Now, that said, different timeline Matt was mentioning. One is, okay, so I am a founder. I actually kind of run a business in India, and then I don't want to go to the U.S. before I have a permanent resident, the status, so or immigrant visa, and then I want to process this while I'm in India. Then what we can do is we can go to consular processing, meaning that we file the petition with the USCIS, the U.S. government entity in the United States. Once that petition is approved, Then, the case actually kind of transferred to the National Visa Center, which actually kind of connect to the U.S. consulate in India. They're going to schedule the immigrant visa interview. And then from there, they obtain the immigrant visa, come to the United States. That's scenario one. Scenario two is, you know what? I don't want to wait that long. And then I have a reason to come to the United States sooner than later, either through the visitor visas or student or L1, H1, or just work visas that we mentioned. Okay. Or they had you know what? I've been working for this company, tech company for the 10 years. And then now I am being transferred to the United States. But you know what? I don't see much of future continue to work with this employer. But I have this entrepreneurial spirit that I want to actually kind of venture into my own business. How can I do that? Then, when you are in the United States, what we call filing the petition and then adjustment of status application together, concurrent filing. The beauty of this is as soon as you file these applications, first, you are allowed to stay while the case is pending. Second, you will be able to, apply both employment authorization and then travel, document, the ability. Okay, that can come around in about, the 5 months. So within 5 months, you can actually kind of conduct your own business on the side. From that point on, you can expand or you can go on your own and then just kind of, build your business. That's the scenario too. So depending on the individual applicant's situation, you can go either scenario one, filing a petition in the United States with the USCIS in the United States, and then obtain the immigrant visa while in India and coming to the United States. Or you have a reason to come to the United States. You have the ways and means, the type of visa that allows you to come to the United States. Say that let's use Ash as an example, if you allow me. So Ash actually kind of had a big dream. I want to go to the United States. I got admission from the school that I've been dreaming about, and then I got the F1 student visa. I come to the United States. I studied. After 2 years, you know what? This is too easy. I don't think I necessarily have to actually kind of finish this school, but I have amazing business ideas. How can I do that? Because students are not allowed to actually kind of conduct their own business. So this can be a major option for that person. So make the investment, everything, file the application, concurrent filing together quickly. As soon as file the application, this person is actually allowed to stay in the United States no matter what, and then have a work authorization coming in about a few months, and then they can conduct their own business. Okay, so that's the scenario too. Now, I'm not going to go through the source of funds, the project selections, the petition filing and petition green card. This one, well, we're going to leave it at that, and then when we have a chance to discuss that later, I'm going to come back and maybe clarify it later for them.
Yeah, no, I agree. So just real briefly, Min Won said source of funds. I agree. We don't want to get too much into it, but only thing I'm gonna say from a business perspective, right? You just need to really document where $800,000 came from. That's what you invest, right? That USCS, does put a lot of weight to make sure it came from credible sources. From a business perspective, I talk about how this gets financed. USCS does not care if the money you're investing is loaned money, is gift money, right? Right. If you have a friend loan you money, if you have an institution lend you money, it just needs proper documentation. Anyone who's interested, we can have like a one-on-one on that. But what I do want to do is shift gears into the type of projects we can invest in and the business side of this. Okay. So first off, right, we talked a little about timelines, and you may have seen in this slide something called a target employment area, right? So these visas have capacity, and there's a few types of projects that people can invest in the U.S., right? Within TEA, there's something known as a rural category. If you invest in a rural project defined by a population less than 20,000 and outside an MSA, now these can be really nice areas. For instance, I had a project in Aspen. I have a project in Park City, Utah. I have projects in really prestigious parts of America, like near Napa Valley. They have a lot of tourism, but they don't count in the population count. and they have really prime land, USCS defines those as rural. The benefit is you get something known as priority processing, and that's the timeline that we're originally quoting, that people have gotten green cards approval in as little as 3 months, conditional green card, right? Now, at the same hand, if people aren't in a rush, you have something known as a high unemployment like project. And look, while the term says high unemployment, the truth is, you know, a lot of very smart people figure out a way to gerrymander tracks, meaning they get job counts from different adjacent areas to make the average of those areas considered high unemployment. To give you an idea, we had a project in Beverly Hills that was high unemployment. We have a project in Chelsea, Manhattan, which is a really prime New York City area, considered high unemployment. But what this does is it allows people to invest at $800 category, right? If you want to invest in a project or start a business anywhere, technically it's 1.5 million. Uh, the capital markets are all already set to be in high unemployment in rural areas. There's another category called infrastructure that is basically government affiliated. I'm not going to talk about that, but that also qualifies as an $800,000 investment. But what people need to know is they have projects all over the US, or you can start your own project anywhere in this country, right? And find solutions to meet your individual needs. Okay. So typical projects that, I just want to tell you that we see is, first of all, the most common type of project is like hospitality, right? So I am, you know, if you can imagine a hotel, it's real estate based. People like the construction of real estate. It's a very, it's collateralized by land, right? And a hotel creates a lot of jobs. So it really aligns well with the EB-5 visa program. And you're going to see a lot of projects like this, okay? But we've seen everything. Okay. I'm working on a project right now that's a quarry, right, in the middle of Texas right now. There's a solar farm, right, that's being set up right now. There's AI data centers that like we're working on. There's manufacturing plants, they're manufacturing steel and they're using EB-5, right? They're funding projects that are really interesting, like an oil and gas that's got some sort of public-private like partnership. That's considered infrastructure, believe it or not, and that's an EB-5 project. Like I said, the Port of Los Angeles, the Grand Central Station in New York. I'm not saying any of these projects are good or bad. You should always do your due diligence on what there is, but there is, really the opportunities are endless if it's structured properly. So EB-5, right? They talk about it being a real estate investment. It's a lot of these projects have a construction component, right? If you want to create jobs, okay? But there is an operating business behind a lot of it. And if you don't need to worry and it's just yourself who's applying, as long as you create 10 jobs yourself, your individual venture or an venture that you're investing in can also support EB-5, right? So it's a very dynamic ecosystem. And I'm just going to tell a little bit about what to look for in a project. So as an investor, we care about a lot of things. I said that each project has to be able to create 10 jobs, right? The mechanism for these jobs is complex, and we like to break it down. But at the end of the day, right, we evaluate projects and we want to make sure they have a very large cushion. I look at projects that have at least 14 to 15 jobs per investor, right, that can support my clients, right? We want to also make sure there's something called a capital stack, right? So that's just talking about a layer of a cake. Projects in EB-5 can be funded any way. You can be an equity investor, you can be a senior loan investor, you can be a mezzanine investor, and you can have all sorts of different structures, right? So that's all about kind of where your security lies, right? Like a senior first lien investor gets their money back. They have a lien on collateral, right? But all that is just kind of a fancy way of saying exactly where you kind of sit on the priority of getting repaid. So what we want to do is we want to make sure our clients invest in a project where there's a lot of skin in the game. Developer has put substantial amount of equity into their own project, and we want to make sure it aligns with your needs, right? Like some people want full capital preservation. They don't want to lose their money. They just want to park their money. Vast majority of my folks. So we want to make sure the capital stack of a project that you invest in is financially sound, has really good structure. Obviously, like reputation and track record is everything. You know, Ash, you talked about working with trusted people is the most important thing. You know, this is what we want to do. We want to work with very vetted, trusted institutions, groups, right? We want to make sure you, if you're going to start your own business, and use EB-5, you also have a track record of doing this and set you up for success and make sure you find the business that's suitable for you, right? Uh, location is really important since EB-5 is very sensitive to where a project is being set up, right? We want to make sure the location has favorable market conditions. It in fact qualifies for some of these perks that we talked about in TEA. And the most important thing, I want to make sure my investors can get their money back, right? So how exactly we have an exit strategy, right? So in the founder world, you guys all know exit strategy about being, hey, I'm going to have an exit and sell to Google. I'm going to sell to a tech company or, go public, right? EB-5, there is a lot of sale-based exits of real estate, but, a lot of projects they actually can refinance, right? And if you refinance to exit like a project, okay, we want to make sure the benchmarks have a ton of cushion, they make them a lot of sense, and we can get into all of that. But I really want to take some of the time we have to answer questions, and I'm going to shut up soon. Only thing Well, only thing I want to say is this program has a very sensitive deadline. So this September 30th, in Ash, I don't know if you were aware of this, okay? EB-5 program is kind of set to lose a lot of its protections unless it gets renewed. We are very active in lobbying for renewal, but from a practical perspective, the investment amount is going to go up, right? And EB-5 is going to have a little bit of uncertainty after September 30th, 2026. So the vast majority of my Indian investors are investing now. And I'm not trying to use this as a scare tactic. EB-5 has been around since 1990, and I just think it'd be really quick to touch upon what the dynamics is with the gold card. But Trump wants to create a competing product that isn't really taking off at all. I think only one person has invested in it. Just so what everyone knows, a gold card is a donation to the US Treasury per individual family member. So if you're a family of four, you have to donate $4 million plus fees for everyone to get one. It's not a real program, right? You cannot create a gold card just because a president says so. Everything that has to come through the US has to go through Congress matters, right? And this is pretty much in the professional circles not a legitimate pathway. And Trump's son-in-law uses EB-5 prolifically. So EB-5 does have a big, bright future. But if anyone's interested in this program, really the time is to act now. And, I'd love to have one-on-one conversations with people that are interested. And honestly, I'm here. I want to shut up and take everyone's questions. So, Ash, take over. I know we have questions from the panel and everything, and want to be here to answer everyone's questions.
No, of course, and I know I'm getting a lot of questions as well. You already answered the green card, the golden card. That's always a kind of like a quick reaction to anything that people are talking about these days. So you answered it very nicely. Thank you both for such an incredible presentation. I think you guys have been like already clarified a bunch of questions, but I do have like a couple of them. One random question popping up in my head, maybe it's relevant for the audience as well. Let's say I know you touched base a little bit on when an investor who is investing, let's say $800,000 or $1 million in any of those projects. When they can get the money back, it depends on the project timeline, or they have the liberty to kind of exit out of the project? And the follow-up on the same question is like, what happens if, let's say, um, there's a construction company working on a Santa Monica Tower, and they're building a tower, and which is like kind of like eligible for the EB-5 investment, right? And they're being built on the EB-5 money that is coming in. What happens if by any chance, be it government failure or the contractors ran away, the project fails, and the investors who have invested money into it from the EB-5 route, how they're going to get the money back, and how it's going to affect the visa process and the green card? And does it affect just on the short-term basis, or it's going to also impact, even though if you have gotten the green card, maybe if something fraud or something that happened in the project later on, and there's a lot of agents these days in the US who are running behind the immigrants in anyway, right? How is it going to impact in the long-term period as well, for the short-term, long-term, and everything? I know there's a amalgamation of like three, four questions here, but I would love to have both of your thoughts in. I know we have like 5 minutes time, so let's be mindful of the Q&A.
Yeah, no worries. I'll answer the first question real quick. So basically, the timeline is pretty straightforward, right? So the way the government sets up the program, green card timeline and the exit timeline have an iron wall. So meaning one can, as long as someone meets something called a sustainment period, which is means your money's invested for, you're eligible for a green card with or without an exit. Okay. The second part is the practical part. How do you exit? That each project will set a term, right? And I would say the typical term, I've seen the lowest be 3 years, which isn't very realistic, and the higher range being 7 years, which I think is the higher end of the timeline. My average client sees an exit about 5 years. Okay. Now, about contingencies. So, Minwan, you're welcome to kind of touch on this. But basically, if a project fails, this is how it's evaluated from a green card EB-5 perspective. Number one, if there is material construction that's occurred, that means jobs have been created, right? And depending on where it is on the construction status and number of jobs per investor is, you can have a soft landing, meaning the investors can still earn their green cards and there'll be a liquidation event, right? Depending on where you sit on the capital stack, maybe you recover some of your money back, maybe you're full, maybe none, right? But technically, your investment has to be at risk, and every project has its own individual exit strategy. But the important thing to know is since 2022, the pathway for green card and investment has an iron wall. And just to reiterate, right, Ash, as long as your money's been invested into a project 2 years, right, you've met your green card eligibility, EB-5 eligibility, that part's taken care of.
Yeah. So
Great.
my point on this is I think this is a very good question. It's about actually separating immigration risk and then investment risk. Okay. If you recall, one of the slides actually that's 11th slide that Matt was discussing about, titled "What to Look For" and then "What to Avoid." And then among them, there are a few things that are immigration related. There are a few things that are investment related. So what he was talking about is more like a kind of how risky it is. What if anything goes? Is there what are the where I am sitting in terms of the getting the money back? That goes to capital stacks, and then also the how likely this project is going to be successful. That goes to the sponsor track record, and then what's going to happen eventually, and then any repayment and exit plan. Those kind of thing all goes to match the territory, and then he's going to be the one who's going to discuss pros and cons of each project, and then what are the risks, what kind of due diligence that each investor has to do. Now, immigration-wise, that's a separate thing. That's where I am actually kind of focusing on. The first, like a job creation cushion, he mentioned that As long as the job is created, some of the project they already actually kind of assigned the job. So the minute that you're getting in and your job creation is already done. So that's one of the immigration compliance related one. Another one is a source of fund, how friendly it is, and whether a source of fund is well prepared or not. That goes to the EB-5 eligibility related the questions, and then also TEA designation. That's not the eternal. It's always kind of expires. That's something also that you have to be careful. And then all those kind of money should be at risk for that sustainment period mentioned, like 2 years. That's what I'm really kind of focusing on, whether my clients can actually kind of get the green card and then eventually remove the conditions later on. So this is actually kind of twofold approach, and the two expert has to be engaged in order to make these things really work.
Yeah.
Just to be mindful of the time, thank you so much for I really appreciate the answers. I know there are like bunch of burning questions that the audience have. Like I'm getting a bunch of DMs as well. But what I can do, maybe I can connect you guys later as well. At the same time, what's the one-liner closing remarks? Like maybe like a quick 10 seconds, how people can reach out to you if they're really interested to go ahead, and because the time is clicking anyways for the deadline for September, how they can reach out to you, who should reach out to, I mean, and please, I mean, like both of you, please share your
So So
communication,
Ash,
like,
yeah, if I can actually comment, if I can jump in, the first step is we have to clear whether their source original fund is good enough to actually kind of qualify for $800,000 or not. So they have to reach out to me first, and once I give a go sign that hey, you're clear, you're good to go, then I can actually kind of pass it over to Matt to make a selection that which project is the best project for them. That's actually
yeah.
kind of recommended way of doing it. But if the client wants to talk either way, well, you know what? I'm okay. I want to speak to Matt directly first, and then see the whole arrays of the other investment potential project. They can do that too.
Oh, perfect. So what I can do, I'll ask Kisler Gunjan to send an email blast with your contact information on both of yours, and then let people choose who wanna they speak first. Either way, it's the same group of folks that you are together working on the joint ventures. So I think again, thank you so much everyone for taking your time. The people who are in the audience, and then Matt and Minwon, really appreciate sharing all your perspective.
Thank you, Ash. And thank you for all the service you do for the venture community in India. And it was such a pleasure. I know everyone has to go, but please, we love to help entrepreneurs. We love to help immigrants. So if anyone just even has a question and want to be pointed to the right direction, feel free to get in touch with Minwan. Feel free to get in touch with myself. This is what we're here for. God bless and have an amazing day.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
feel free to
Ash,
reach out to me as
yeah,
well. I'm happy to facilitate. Yeah.
yeah. Ash, thank you for this opportunity. By the way, Matt, also thank you for organizing all of this and then creating this opportunity for all of us. And the one final the remark that I wanted to make is, at least within our community, Indian is known for being hustler, and that goes to the heart of the frontier and immigrant mindset. And then I want to encourage Indian founders to come and then continue to pursue their idea. And then this is the
Yeah.
platform that you want to settle and thrive. And then you can always kind of, extend further beyond the United States too. We are here for you. And then I'm waiting for your actual kind of contact, and then ready to actually kind of discuss any question that you guys might have.
Thank you both. This is the gateway to the American dream. Really appreciate it. To be continued.